Hello and welcome to the 12 Months to Marathon podcast with me, John Hill, the running podcast for the over 35s with marathon dreams. Episode 62, Why Heart Rate Variability Matters. Before we start, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody. We've just hit 10,000 downloads on the podcast. I started it just over a year ago. So if you're a new listener, please feel free to check over the episodes. There's some fantastic interviews, first and foremost, some great people, and then some tips that you might find useful for all things running. And secondly, if you are a frequent or regular listener, thank you very much for supporting the podcast. I do appreciate it very much indeed, and I appreciate you for listening. So I'm training for High Rocks, as most of you know. That's 5 weeks roughly as I sit here. Training's going really, really well. Trying out some different things in terms of my training style and consistency. Trying out some nasal strips, which is a new thing. Shout out to Zone 8 Breathing. Feel free to give them a follow and check those out online. You can also get a discount if you head to my bio and check out the link in my bio there. I'm giving those a try for the more intense workouts, so it's going pretty well. And it's kind of prompted the episode that I wanted to do today, really, just because I've noticed about my heart rate variability and some interesting changes. But before we do that, I just wanted to explain a little bit more about what it actually is before we crack on. So hopefully by the end of this episode, I'll have explained to you what it actually measures, how to track it, how to use it to steer your weekly training, and what to do to improve it, because you can. So what is it? So basically, your heart doesn't always tick like a metronome does. So even a steady 60 beats per minute, for example, say, the time gap between those beats naturally varies, and we're talking milliseconds, and the wiggle room is called heart rate variability. Now, this was something that was introduced to me when I got my brand new Garmin watch, and funnily enough, an interview on this podcast with Gary, he talked to me about heart rate variability and something he kept an eye on, because we were both sort of older runners approaching 50. So I wanted to talk about it today because I've noticed that my heart rate variability is the lowest it's been since I had the flu in March. And I mean, if you don't know, I had the flu in March, proper flu, 42 degree temperature, night sweat, soaking wet, hallucinations, the whole shooting match. Really, really ill after my marathon in March. And I've noticed that my heart rate variability has dropped quite a bit. Now, that then has had an impact on my training readiness on Garmin. So go back over the podcast episodes to look at the dangers of data and things like that, and not taking too much into this. But it's quite interesting how it's changed quite a bit. And a little bit of me thinks there might be an issue with my Garmin or everyone's Garmin, because I did put some out on Instagram about this. But it is quite low, and I'm not that tired, to be honest. I am tired because I'm training quite intensely, but I'm not that tired. So I've kind of had to ignore it a little bit while it resets. But I wanted to talk about it because I think it's important. So if you do have access to this metric, I think there's a slight issue with my watch and a slight issue with the data at the moment, because it was stable. It's always been quite stable. But I did want to talk about it today while it's fresh in my mind, just to give you some tips on how to measure it, what to do, and so on and so forth. So why do we care about this? Because the variability is driven by your autonomic nervous system, which is the tug of war between your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic system is go, go, go. Your parasympathetic system is rest, recover, digest, that type of thing. So those are the two ways to understand the difference in your nervous system. So if you have a higher heart rate variability, generally it means you're more recovered, more adaptable, and ready to take on some load. So typically, my heart rate variability will be somewhere between 64 and 70. Yeah, at the moment, it's saying it's 52, but it is on the increase for some reason. But again, I feel okay. And on that note, a lower heart rate variability usually means that your stress is high. It could be training stress, life stress, poor sleep, dehydration, illness, or simply a big block of hard work that you haven't absorbed yet, which I probably think is that for me, because I have increased my load, because I've been training for High Rocks. Then I did the Great North. I didn't slouch on the Great North. I really did give it a go. And I think it might be a little bit of a correlation. Like I said, I don't think it's necessarily that 100% accurate. And we've always got to be careful about this. But I do think there might be something under the surface in me that's telling me I'm a little bit tired than I think I am, even though I'm sleeping okay. And my resting heart rate hasn't changed that much. My resting heart rate is below 40, typically 39. It's been batting around 40 to 42, so it's not shot up like it typically would if you were really fatigued, because that's another thing that you'll notice. If you are measuring your resting heart rate, as I talked about previously on a previous episode, then that will shoot up if you are typically fatigued. So what you want to do is if it is working correctly, think about heart rate variability is a bit like a volume control on your recovery system. So higher volume, more flexibility, lower volume, more strain. Okay, so different devices use different metrics. Okay, so I think that the Garmin uses something called RMSSD. Okay, so that's why you perhaps shouldn't compare heart rate variability to other people, because they could potentially be using different metrics. So how to do it properly. So most of the people that are listening to this will have some kind of wearable, Garmin, Polar, Aura, Whoop, that type of thing. Yeah, so which will give you an overnight score. Yeah. Or you can do a phone-based reading, but I don't recommend having your phone near your head in bed. Or you can use a chest strap or things like that. But most people listening to this will be using some kind of smartwatch or wearable, yeah? So make sure that if you are measuring heart rate variability, it's done first thing on waking. But typically what will happen is a good watch, like a Garmin, will do it automatically, so you won't have to do this manually. Build your personal baseline, so give it 2 to 4 weeks to establish a normal range. Now, this is why I think mine's out, so I think there might be a little bit of an issue, and I think it's catching back up again. So I don't know what's happened, but I think it might be catching back up again. I think I might have been a little bit under the weather as well, not really ill, but I think that might have impacted it. It has been a lot lower than I would hope. Yeah, so it's been much lower than I would normally hope it was, but I think it is now starting to catch up again. Okay, so here's the thing. So you've got 3 things so here's the important bit, which is what I've been working off. So you want to pair your heart rate variability, your resting heart rate, and how you feel. Okay, so because 2 out of those 3 things, resting heart rate and how I feel, have been okay, I've kind of parked my heart rate variability because I can't afford to be taking weeks and weeks off when I've got high rocks coming up, because I need to put my intensity at a level to make sure that I'm ready for high rocks, because I want to do well. So if your heart rate variability is something that you measure and it's something that you consider, and here's the things to consider, right? And here's the things to look at. So if your heart rate is in normal range and you feel okay, then proceed as planned with any training that you've got, or your normal training week. Okay, if it's clearly down against your baseline, or your resting heart rate's up, or you don't feel right, then you've got to adjust your training. And this is what I tried to do the week before the Great North Run. So I tried to pull back a little bit the week before the Great North Run, and it got back a little bit, but it wasn't really in line. Okay, so if you are feeling a little flat, and it's not placebo and it's not mindset, and you can say, actually, I am feeling a bit under the weather, and it's correlated to my heart rate variability being lower, and also my resting heart rate's a concern as well, it might have gone up a little bit, that's probably a good sign to rest and recover. Okay, because if you say miss a day or 2, then that won't necessarily impact you too much if you're following a specific plan longer term. Okay, so what I did for high rocks was, for the Great North Run, with high rocks in mind later on, was I took a few days off before to have a mini taper, and then I didn't do anything really that high intense for 3 days. But it was interesting that I did the Great North Run on the Sunday, and then on the Thursday I did quite an intense workout, and I felt fine. I genuinely felt fine. And at the moment, of course, I'm tired and I'm a little bit sore because I'm training quite intensive for high rocks, but I don't feel fatigued. So I'm having to sort of manually accept that my heart rate variability will potentially catch up, and that's why I wanted to do this today. So the best thing to do is, you probably can still go for, say, an easy run if your resting heart rate's a little bit low, unless you are totally wiped. If you're totally wiped and you feel fatigued, plus this metric is telling you you're fatigued, that's a good sign to take a step back, particularly if you're following, say, a 16-week plan for a marathon. You've got time to make this stuff up. Okay, if you're feeling okay but it's low, you could perhaps reduce the intensity, if that makes sense. So you could say, well, okay, I was supposed to do like a tempo session for whatever distance, I could pull that back a little bit and adjust it. Yeah, if it's constantly low and you're constantly fatigued and your heart rate and your resting heart rate's going up as well, that's probably a sign to take a few days where you are pulling back a little bit, even resting and recovering. Okay, and then seeing what impact that potentially has on your resting heart rate variability over time. Okay, so there's a lot of information there, but what I'm trying to get to is, I'm not saying it's the one and only measure you need to look at, because like for myself, I've had to say, well, actually, there's 3 calculations here. There's how I feel, there's heart rate variability, and there's resting heart rate. If 2 of those 3 things are okay, then I need to perhaps keep training, and hopefully it catches up. Okay, so if you need to change your training schedule slightly, that's fine. It's better to do that, particularly if you're feeling fatigued, because you don't want to get injured, you don't want to get ill, you don't want to do anything that could knock you out for longer than a couple of days. All right, so have that flexibility, and remember that heart rate variability is subject to the data that you're collecting being accurate, and 2, it's a readiness thing. It's not a identity thing. It doesn't define your ability as a runner. Okay, a smart runner, a good runner, as I do a lot with my coaching stuff, is somebody that can adapt to different situations along the way. Okay, so that's why you need to keep an eye on it. All right, so heart rate variability can prevent you just keep pushing. And if you're looking at it, it's a good idea to have this as a metric alongside everything else, just in case, because something could be going along under the surface. Okay, now, if you're getting a little bit older, then potentially this can have impacts such as hormonal shifts, life, stress, difficult in recovery. So if you're like me and you're 50, this is where potentially this metric is quite useful to look at, because other things can dictate it, particularly like sleep. Sleep can really impact it. If you are somebody that's quite driven, you have to be quite careful with this, and I think it's a good way to keep you in check, because if you're trying to burn the candle at both ends, for example, this is a really good metric to say, okay, I might need to pull something back here. So again, just be a little bit careful, just understand what could impact it, and then just be aware that if everything's going in the wrong direction, that's a definite sign to take a step back and recover well. Okay, so how do you improve it? Well, normally, in my case, sleep, number 1. Talked about sleep before. I recommend 7. I think if you're getting 7 good hours a night, based on your metrics, I think you're doing okay. Obviously, the more the better. I've found that optimum for me is probably somewhere between 7 and 7.5 actual asleep hours, not awake and not restless. Okay, so sleep's the good one. Again, there's episodes on sleep. Feel free to look at them. Breath work. Now, this is interesting. So nasal breathing, breath work, pre-run, post-run, any time of day. I do meditation in the morning, which I need to keep doing, which I think is helping. And it's something that I'm working on because of the frequency and intensity of my high rocks workout. So breath work. Again, breath work's probably a podcast on its own, but just 3 to 5 minutes of slow nasal breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 second hold, 4 seconds out, will usually help to do this as well. Dehydration apparently is another big one. So yeah, try to make sure you're hydrated. If you use electrolytes, not a bad thing to do if this is low or the other metrics are low as well. Just make sure you're hydrated, and that's normally a simple fix, because a lot of times that we have problems, I think, as runners or as athletes in general, is when we're actually dehydrated, because we're so busy with stuff you don't think to drink. And especially if we drink maybe a lot of caffeine or things like that, we don't always think to make sure we rehydrate. And if you are training for a specific event, then electrolytes are normally a good idea, maybe a couple of times a week. So strength so if you're doing strength training, not every session has to be you don't have to bring the house down. Okay, so every session doesn't have to be ground and pound, as I call it. So if you are lifting weights, you can lift weights in a way that's controlled, still building strength without it being an absolute smash of a session, so you are all over the place. Alcohol and caffeine can impact it. Caffeine's obviously one of those. Listen to my sleep podcast. I don't recommend any caffeine after sort of 1 o'clock. And alcohol as well can really hit your HRV alongside other things. But again, there's a common sense element to alcohol. But I think it's one of those things that you have to make some trade-offs and see where the problem is. But there's a deeper conversation with alcohol. I think most people understand that alcohol's not good for you at a certain volume, but it's about understanding why we drink, and that's probably a podcast for another day. So sunlight is a good one, mobility, things like that, and then making sure that you stick to some kind of how do I put this? Making sure that you are some kind of mix in terms of your variability of training as well. Okay, so try to mix up your distances, your paces, your surfaces, your things like that. So this is why usually if I'm marathon training, my heart rate variability is good, because I'm doing loads of different types of training. So I'm doing interval runs, I'm doing hill runs, I'm doing all these things. So just be careful about doing the same things over and over again, basically. Right, so Here are some little tips to finish up with. So, first and foremost, a higher heart rate variability is not always a good thing. It's staying within the range that's the important bit. And again, usually the Garmin's will tell you that. Don't overreact to, like I'm not doing, to a single day, because little things like sleep or stress can impact it. Don't always think that you don't train with a low heart rate variability, because you can do like a slow aerobic run or a low aerobic run, and just don't worry about the device. Like with me, I'm like, okay, there might be an issue here, but I'm just going to stick to my tech, stick to my one watch, let that see itself out, and then we'll do on that. So here is your game plan then. So if you are measuring resting heart rate, I keep getting the heart rate variability. So three things. So you've got heart rate variability normal, you feel okay, you can probably keep it at a good intensity. Everything below that, just make an assessment based on the 3 pillars. And the 3 pillars are heart rate variability, resting heart rate, how you feel. Okay. And always adjust your training accordingly, especially around things like sleep, because what you don't want to do is do the whole no pain, no gain thing and end up completely wiping yourself out. Okay. So that's kind of how to look at it. Yeah. So it's about understanding the 3 metrics, how you feel, and then making sure that you're not losing your mind if it's all over the place. Okay, so just to conclude on this, make sure that if you are measuring it, you measure it consistently using one piece of tech, you're watching trends, and you are seeing how it fits alongside your training and how you feel in all areas, not just the one thing. And just remember to do the basics brilliantly. So, sleep, breathing, hydration, those sort of things. So that's it, really. That's heart rate variability from me. There's some areas there that might be a little bit complex or whatever, but the key thing for me really is to make sure that you understand that it is a metric, it's only a metric, and we are relying very heavily on the tech to ensure that we're trusting the tech, basically, and we have to have a little bit of a leap of faith there, but never forget how you feel, because when my heart rate variability went down really low, and it was actually quite scarily low based on what it has been, I felt absolutely fine on the day that it did that. So we do just need to be a little bit careful when we are measuring this type of information and this type of tech. So that's a bit of a longer one today, because I wanted to make sure it's all covered, and there's quite a bit to it. But remember, common sense is your friend here. Use a bit of common sense. And if you're stuck, just, do some research, test it out. Or if you want to reach out to me on Instagram at 12 Months to Marathon, you certainly can do if you don't follow me already. So thank you very much for listening. That's heart rate variability. I appreciate your time today. Don't forget to hop over to Instagram and follow me at 12 Months to Marathon. If you're new here, please follow the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. I do appreciate it. If you haven't yet left me a review, a 5-star review, please do so on Apple or Spotify. It means a lot, and it really, really helps me. And also drop a comment in below as well. That helps too. And share it with your friends, and I'd appreciate that. So thanks everyone for listening so far. There's more to come. I'll see if I can get some more cool guests on, because that's my favourite one to do, because I meet some incredible people. Thank you very much for listening. All the best with your running journey where you are at the moment, and I look forward to speaking to you all very soon indeed.